So this week marks the fourth week of the Virginia General Assembly session, and I just want to touch on a couple bills that have been introduced, have been heard in subcommittees, committees, and on the floor so far. Also want to give you some information on a website that could be very informative to you as constituents so you can kind of stay on track on what's happening in our government. So this is Virginia's Legislative Information Systems webpage. I have it in my link tree. It is the top link. And when you go to that link, this is everything that's listed. If you want to see what's happening in both the House and the Senate each and every day, you can go to House Minutes or Senate Minutes, and it outlines exactly what was on the floor, what was discussed, what was voted on, etc. In addition, on both the House and Senate Minutes web pages, you can find video links and you can watch these sessions in their entirety. So you can actually hear what's being argued, which representatives had something to say about an individual bill, etc. So there's been quite a few bills already coming out of the House that are considered uncontested, meaning they're pretty much going through the motions of reading the bill and taking a vote, and they're getting 100% bipartisan support. Some examples are HB 25, establishing an annual tax holiday in August for, tax-free for students and families, HB 66, establishing timing and frequency around fire drills, HB 98, public secondary school satisfaction and physical education requirement, now allowing schools that have junior ROTC to replace your PE credit in the school system for 9th through 12th grade. The list goes on. So again, if you go to these websites, you can kind of view through some of these uncontested bills and see what's kind of going straight through the process and will land immediately on the governor's desk at the end of this session. So I'm going to spend the remainder of this video discussing the bills that are not uncontested and are showing more partisan style support. I'm going to be discussing bills that are coming out of subcommittees, committees, and even on the House floor. And I'm really going to be focusing on how our local representation has been voting on these bills. So when I'm talking about the House of Delegates in the greater Williamsburg area, which is James City, York County, and the city of Williamsburg, we're looking at Delegate Amanda Batten, Delegate AC Cordoza, and newly elected Delegate Chad Green. So just keep that in mind when we cycle through these bills. So the first bill I'm going to address is HB 157, introduced by Delegate Adele McClure. And I actually have another video on my page discussing this in more depth, but basically it establishes that our farm laborers and our farm employees, some of the most labor-intensive jobs in the Commonwealth, will be paid a minimum wage moving forward. As it stands right now, there are multiple jobs to include these that are exempt from the minimum wage here in the state of Virginia. So these individuals typically could be paid well below the minimum wage at the state and or federal level, and that is considered legal. And this bill basically says this position will no longer be listed as an exemption, and I think it's a pretty common sense bill. Now, while this bill did pass 50 to 49, it is worth noting that all three of our representatives, Batten, Cordoza, and Green, along with every other Republican delegate, voted against paying farm laborers and farm employees the minimum wage. Next up is HB 208, introduced by Delegate Shelley Simons. It is titled Comprehensive Plan, Healthy Community Strategies. I really love this bill. The bill provides that the locality strategy may include identifying neighborhoods with major sources of pollution or hazardous waste and identifying objectives and policies to reduce health risks in such neighborhoods, promote civic engagement by residents of such neighborhoods, and prioritize improvements and programs that address the needs of such neighborhoods. Really empowering localities to address localized issues when it comes to pollution, harms that are directly impacting particular communities. Many times we're going to see it's lower income communities. So this is a great idea. Plus, I feel like this is really focusing on small government and giving localities a little bit more power. So how did people vote? So this bill did pass 49 to 45 with some bipartisan support. As we see, Delegate Batten and Delegate Green voted against it. Again, this is giving power to localities. Both of these representatives have talked about we need to empower our localities more, so I'm very surprised. Delegate Cordoza voted for it, so he was one of the Republicans that went against the majority and voted for this bill. HB 174, introduced by Delegate Henson, is marriage lawful regardless of sex, gender, or race of parties, issuance of marriage licenses. So basically, this just ensures that government entities that are authorized to issue marriage licenses shall not deny anyone based on gender or sexual orientation or race, etc. So it's worth noting that same-sex marriage particularly is protected by federal law thanks to a decision in 2015 by the Supreme Court. Yes, only 9 years ago. However, the Commonwealth of Virginia's Constitution does not protect equality in marriage. So this law basically ensures no discrimination is put forth by government agencies or employees of government agencies. But we also have a constitutional amendment that looks like it's going to be heard to protect it in our Constitution in 2025. Now, again, this is about consenting adults simply asking to be recognized by law in matrimony. Let's see how this 54 to 40 and 1 absentee vote turned out. As you can see, 40 Republicans voted against it. Thankfully, we did have roughly 5 Republicans that were for it. Of those no votes, it included, yes, Delegate Batten and Delegate Cardoza. Of those yes votes, it included Delegate Chad Green, which I was very impressed and thankful for his vote on this one. This is HB 498. It is a school board policy. It's basically asking that parental notification is sent out within 30 days of the start of school, just reminding families that may or may not have firearms in the home that we need to be responsible, we need to be mindful, we need to be making sure that our minors that may have access to the guns don't have access, and just the ramifications of them gaining access, especially if some type of conflict happens at the school system and they want to retaliate with said weapon. I think this is a really simple ask of school boards. And again, this bill did pass out of subcommittee by 13 to 8. However, as you can see, both Delegate Batten and Delegate Green, along with every other Republican on this committee, voted against establishing this school policy. Next up is HB 46, introduced by Delegate Bennett Parker, and it is entitled Firearm Transfers to Another Person from a Prohibited Person. So basically, if you're deemed a prohibited person to carry a firearm due to, say, a protective order in the courts, perhaps you are being accused of domestic violence, sexual battery, stalking, etc., and there is evidence that a judge has decided you should not have a weapon for the next 45 days while we further hear this. Basically, this gives guidance on what should happen to any firearms you currently have in your possession. And it outlines it just saying you can turn it over to a local law enforcement and there will be paperwork and documentation for that. Or you can turn it over to someone who is of age 21 or older and is also not deemed a prohibited person. So someone who has a legal right to possess a firearm in the Commonwealth of Virginia. As you can see, the vote here passed 51 to 44. Now, again, we saw some minor bipartisan support. Delegate Green was one of the people that voted yay on this. And again, Delegate Batten and Delegate Cardoza voted nay. Again, this is just outlining language to just make sure that whoever's possessing your firearm during this temporary period is legally able to possess said firearm. And there is documentation, aka a paper trail, to ensure that someone does have possession of this firearm. This bill is HB 166. I actually really love this bill. I'm someone who personally composts, and I recognize that we do have a lot of waste when it comes to meals in our school system. So this basically requires the Department of Education to offer guidance and resources on composting programs for local school divisions. It does not require the school divisions to participate in it. So again, there's no like caveat to that. It simply gives us resources. So if we as a school division want to advocate for doing that, we have some really great language and guidance to do so, and just really make good use of the wasted food material, especially like a school like mine, but we have our own garden on the premises. We could be using this and making an educational experience. So again, let's see how people voted. It was passed 58 to 40. And we see that all 3 of our delegates, Batten, Cardoza, and Green, voted no, with all Republicans. Again, there was some bipartisan support because as it stands right now, we have 49 Republicans, and we see that only 40 of them voted against this bill. Next up is kind of a revision of a bill from last session. It is HB 183, firearm storage in residence where minor or person prohibited from possessing is present, and kind of expanding on the penalty of that. So pretty much it's stating that if someone possesses a firearm in a home with a minor child and that minor child hurts themselves or others, the individual that owns the firearm and is responsible is going to be held to the highest extent of the law. Again, I believe that if you are truly a responsible gun owner and you are educating your child in your home around gun safety and adequately storing it, if you're not doing that education aspect, you should have no problem with this bill being on the books. This has not made it to the floor yet, but it was voted on by the full House committee. And as you can see, Delegate Batten and Cardoza, along with every other Republican, voted nay. Again. Now, this bill, HB 16 by Delegate Garrett, was passed by indefinitely, and basically it states that someone can carry a firearm on Capitol grounds if they have a concealed weapons permit. Funny enough, I was there and actually argued against this bill publicly, but he claimed that gun-free zones are dangerous. The Capitol Police have guns. And Batten and Cordoza, along with every other Republican, wanted to allow additional guns on Capitol grounds. I hope you enjoyed this recap. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.